Chapter 16: Sleep, Solitude, and the Subtle Art of Recovery. Sensitivity requires recovery, not just once in a while, but as a rhythm. And not dramatic recovery, not disappearing for a week to reset, but quiet, steady restoration woven into everyday life. For many people, the world is loud, fast, and crowded. But for those with sensitive systems, that noise doesn't just pass by, it stays. It lingers in the muscles, in the breath, in the dreams. That's why deep rest isn't optional. It's essential maintenance. Let's begin with sleep. Sleep isn't just rest for the body. It's processing for the brain. And for highly sensitive people, the brain works overtime. Each day brings in more sensory input, more emotional signals, more subtle cues to organize. And if sleep is light, disrupted, or delayed, that backlog piles up, so rest never quite feels like enough. Creating a sleep environment that supports sensitive processing can make a profound difference. Think softness, quiet, darkness, not perfection, just intention. No overhead lights for an hour before bed. No screens flooding the nervous system with blue light and stimulation. A calming ritual, tea, reading, soft music, something that signals you're safe now. We're closing for the day. And perhaps, most importantly, emotional closing. Before sleep, the mind often replays the day. Conversations, mistakes, worries. A practice: sit quietly, breathe, ask inwardly, what am I still holding on to from today? Then, with or without writing it down, consciously release it. I did enough. I said what I could. That moment can rest now. Not to perfect anything, but to make space. Now to solitude. Solitude is not loneliness. It's the space where the nervous system uncoils, where no one else's emotions are present, where the body can finally come back into its own rhythm. Some people don't need much of it. Others, especially sensitives, require solitude like oxygen. It doesn't need to be dramatic. It can be 10 minutes on the floor with eyes closed, a short walk without sound, even an intentional pause in a room with the door closed, no one asking for anything. This space isn't about doing. It's about not doing, about letting everything that isn't essential drop away. Solitude allows integration, and integration brings calm, but it often requires defending. Not everyone understands the need for stillness. Some may interpret it as avoidance, distance, disinterest. Let them misunderstand briefly while you protect something sacred, because a nervous system that never gets solitude becomes brittle. It can't tell the difference between urgent and ordinary. It begins to brace all the time, and that bracing turns into burnout. This is where the subtle art of recovery comes in. Recovery isn't just sleep and solitude. It's also small choices throughout the day. It's turning down the volume, literally and metaphorically. Choosing not to answer a message right away. Listening to silence instead of music. Taking a slower route to work. Closing the laptop without apologizing. It's saying, I don't need to fill every space. Recovery happens in these quiet refusals, these subtle adjustments, not with guilt, but with deep trust. A sensitive system that recovers well becomes a system that thrives, that responds instead of reacts, that creates instead of just copes. And over time, a new rhythm takes shape, one that no longer needs constant escape, because space has already been built in. So recovery stops being an emergency and starts becoming normal, not a luxury, not a treat, just part of how life is lived. And in that softness, strength returns. Strength isn't force, it's protection. Pause here. Let the stillness settle. It's easy to think of strength as something loud, something sharp, something that dominates, pushes through, breaks past limits. But real strength, sustainable strength, often looks different. It's quiet, rooted, protective. It doesn't rush. It doesn't shout. It doesn't need to prove anything. For highly sensitive people, strength doesn't come from pushing harder. It comes from knowing when to pause, from honoring what's needed, from creating a life that supports the nervous system instead of constantly overriding it. Strength isn't force, it's protection. It's the decision to build a rhythm that includes rest. It's the clarity to say no without guilt. It's the courage to care deeply without drowning. And in that kind of strength, something shifts. Sensitivity is no longer a weight to carry. It becomes a guide, a compass, a form of wisdom. And wisdom, when protected, becomes power. So take a breath, not to push forward, but to settle in. Because what's ahead is not about survival anymore. It's about connection, on your terms, with boundaries and balance. Chapter 17, Social Survival to Soulful Connection. Many sensitive people learn early how to survive socially. They read facial expressions before words are spoken. They feel unspoken tension in the room and adjust their behavior to diffuse it. They become caretakers in conversations, nodding, softening, absorbing. And on the surface, it works. They're seen as thoughtful, empathetic, easy to be around. But inside, something else happens. Social connection begins to feel like performance. And over time, even close relationships start to feel tiring. Not because they don't care, but because they're constantly managing the emotional space. This is what we might call social survival mode. It's not about fear, it's about strategy. It's what happens when someone with a sensitive nervous system adapts to an environment that doesn't feel emotionally safe or attuned. Instead of showing up as themselves, they show up as what the moment seems to need. They adjust, they anticipate, they disappear, not outwardly, but energetically. This pattern can last for years, and it's often mistaken for kindness or maturity or strength. But inside, the cost is high. Over-functioning becomes the norm. Being the listener, the peacekeeper, the one who always says, "It's fine." And meanwhile, true connection, the kind that nourishes, gets further away. So how does this shift? How does someone move from surviving socially to connecting soulfully? It starts with emotional self-permission. Permission to feel uncomfortable when the room is tense, without taking responsibility for fixing it. Permission to let someone else hold silence. Permission to not respond right away. Permission to speak up when something doesn't feel right. This isn't rudeness, it's honesty. And for many sensitive people, honesty feels radical, even risky. But without honesty, connection isn't real. It's just maintenance. The next layer is self-inclusion. So often, sensitive people focus entirely on how others feel. Did that person feel heard? Did I make them uncomfortable? Was I too much? But they forget to ask, did I feel seen? Did I feel safe? Was I able to be myself, or was I managing the interaction the whole time? Connection that drains is not connection. It's emotional labor. And while there's a place for showing up generously, there must also be space for showing up authentically. That means allowing nuance, being honest about needs, letting others hold discomfort when it arises without rushing in to fix it. Because fixing everything for everyone creates imbalance. And imbalance is not connection, it's dependence. Now, this doesn't mean walking away from every relationship that isn't perfect. It means bringing more awareness to how one connects. Questions to consider. In which relationships do I feel the most relaxed? Who lets me be quiet without asking what's wrong? Who responds with curiosity, not pressure, when I express a need? Where do I feel like I'm allowed to take up space? These are markers of emotional safety. They're not dramatic. They're often subtle. But when present, they create relationships that restore instead of drain. And from that place, connection becomes soulful. Soulful connection is not constant closeness. It's mutual respect for each person's inner world. It's space to show up fully or softly, depending on what's real in the moment. It's knowing that presence doesn't always require performance. And for the sensitive person, that kind of connection is life-giving. It brings regulation, clarity, peace. So the shift is this: from managing people's moods to trusting their capacity, from avoiding discomfort to allowing honesty, from being liked by everyone to being known by a few deeply. That's what soulful connection offers. Not quantity, but depth. And depth, for the sensitive soul, is where true belonging begins. Chapter 19. Creating emotional safety without losing yourself. One of the most beautiful things about being a sensitive person is the ability to create safety for others. You probably do it without even thinking. You nod when someone speaks, even if it hurts. You listen deeply, even when your mind is tired. You notice what others need, and you offer it before they ask. This is your gift, your natural attunement. People feel seen around you. They feel calmer. They feel more themselves. But here's the quiet danger. You can create emotional safety for others, and lose your own in the process. It happens slowly. A conversation goes on longer than you had the energy for, but you stay. Someone tells you something heavy, and you carry it long after they've left. You smile, even though your stomach tightened 3 sentences ago. And because the other person feels better, you think, I did the right thing. But then you walk away, tired, foggy, disconnected from yourself. That's the signal. Your nervous system gave more than it received. And that's not connection. That's a leak. True emotional safety includes you, not just the other person, not just their relief, their comfort, their regulation. Yours too. So ask yourself gently, do I feel safe in this conversation? Do I feel free to take space if I need it? Do I feel like I can pause or say no without guilt? These are not selfish questions. They're the foundation of sustainable connection. When one person always makes room and the other always takes it, there is no balance. There is only caretaking. And caretaking without consent or reciprocity breeds quiet resentment. You may already know what that feels like. The smile that feels hollow, the warmth that feels forced, the moment you realize you're more present for someone than they've ever been for you. This doesn't mean you need to shut people out, but it does mean you need to center yourself too. That might look like this: giving yourself permission to pause during an intense conversation, letting someone know you need time to process before responding, saying, I want to support you, but I don't have the emotional space right now. Ending a call when your body says, enough, even if the other person wants to. Keep talking. It can feel uncomfortable at first. You might fear being seen as cold. You might worry that someone will feel abandoned. You might even judge yourself. I should be able to handle this. But that's just the old training. The one that taught you to equate love with emotional labor. You're not rejecting anyone. You're refusing to disappear. And the relationships that are real, the ones that nourish instead of deplete, will adjust. They will honor your honesty. They will respect your rhythm. They will meet you where you are, not where you force yourself to be. That's emotional safety for both people. Not one always giving, not one always receiving. A shared space, a mutual holding, an agreement. We take care of ourselves so we can show up whole. You deserve that, not just as a sensitive person, but as a human being. It's not your job to regulate every interaction. It's not your job to make sure no one ever feels discomfort. It's your job to stay connected to yourself, so that when you give, it comes from overflow, not obligation. Because when you give from overflow, it doesn't deplete you. It enriches you. It affirms your presence instead of erasing it. And that kind of connection, it doesn't just feel good. It lasts. Chapter 20. How to be deep without getting lost in others. Depth is natural for the sensitive person. Surface-level conversations often feel flat. Small talk can feel like noise. What you crave is something else. Realness, presence, meaning. To be in a conversation that has weight. To sit with someone and feel like they're actually there with you. To share something that matters and be met. This is the beauty of depth. But without boundaries, depth can become dangerous. Not for others, for you. Because the deeper you go into someone else's world, the easier it is to lose your grip on your own. Especially when the other person is in pain, or confused, or needing support that they don't know how to ask for. You sense it. You move toward it. You hold it, even when your body says, this is too much. And before long, the line between compassion and enmeshment disappears. This is where many sensitive people begin to disappear into others. Not dramatically, quietly. They feel what others feel. They echo what others want. They mold to the energy in the room, even if it contradicts their own. It's not intentional, it's instinct, but it leaves them feeling foggy, unclear, disoriented after the interaction ends. That sense of disconnection, it's not random, it's the signal that a boundary was crossed. Not necessarily by the other person, but internally. So, how do you stay deep without getting lost? It starts with self-reference. That means checking in with yourself regularly as you connect. Noticing, what am I feeling right now? Is this mine or theirs? Am I trying to match their energy, or am I staying with my own? You can ask quietly, even in the middle of a conversation, even in the middle of a smile. This isn't detachment, it's presence. Because the more self-awareness there is, the less likely you are to disappear. Depth doesn't mean self-abandonment. Depth means staying rooted while extending compassion. Imagine a tree with deep roots. It bends in the wind. It doesn't resist connection, but it doesn't uproot itself to follow a storm. That's the image. You can feel deeply, you can sit with intensity, you can care fully, but only if your roots stay in place. Practically, this might look like pausing before jumping in with advice, listening without feeling responsible for solving, letting someone cry without needing to fix their sadness, speaking your own truth, even if it shifts the tone of the conversation. These moments create depth with integrity. They keep you in the exchange without dissolving into it. And if someone doesn't respond well to that, if they pull for more than you have to give, if they only feel connected when you mirror their mood or emotion, that's a cue, not to harden, but to notice. Not all relationships can hold real depth. Some only exist when you disappear, and those, eventually, must be grieved. Because you're not here to be a projection screen. You're not here to be an emotional container for others who don't know how to hold themselves. You're here to connect, truly, which means you get to stay in the room with yourself, even when someone else is hurting. You don't have to disappear into their story. You don't have to leave your own center. And when you learn to do that, something beautiful happens. Your depth becomes a gift that nourishes you, too. Not just something you give away. You feel clearer, more grounded, more honest in your presence. And others feel it too, even if they can't name it. Because the truth is, real connection doesn't ask you to abandon yourself. It invites you to show up, whole, real, and rooted, and trust that it's enough. Chapter 21, Soulful Relationships That Don't Cost You Your Peace. There comes a point when exhaustion starts to teach clarity. You've stayed in conversations too long. You've given without limits. You've poured yourself into dynamics where connection required self-erasure. And finally, something shifts. You stop asking, how can I be easier to be around? And you start asking, where do I feel most like myself? That's where soulful relationships begin. They don't start in the moment of perfect compatibility. They begin in the moment you choose not to trade peace for proximity. You start to notice which people listen without needing you to explain everything twice, which people don't flinch when your mood changes, which people don't expect you to entertain them, or fix them, or carry the emotional weight of the moment. In these spaces, your nervous system starts to relax, not because nothing is being felt, but because everything can be felt without punishment. There's room for honesty. There's space for silence. There's mutual care, not just performance. These relationships might not be flashy. They might not demand attention, but they become sanctuaries, places where the body doesn't have to brace, where laughter doesn't require effort, where presence feels like rest, not a task. This kind of connection is built, not found, and it's built on small, consistent truths. I need quiet right now. I care about you, but I don't have capacity today. I love this conversation, but I'm starting to feel full. Can we just sit for a while without speaking? In the wrong relationship, statements like this are misunderstood. They're seen as withdrawal, coldness, inconvenience. But in soulful relationships, they are heard for what they are. Trust. Trust that the connection can hold honesty. Trust that the other person doesn't need a version of you that's always available. Trust that love doesn't require self-abandonment. And when that trust is mutual, peace begins to grow. Peace doesn't mean no tension ever arises. It means tension isn't always a threat. It means you can disagree without fear. You can pause without guilt. You can speak your needs and still be loved. That's what safety feels like. And for the sensitive soul, safety is the soil from which real intimacy grows. Not just romantic intimacy, but the kind that lives in friendship, family, partnership, creative, collaboration. Intimacy that's built on presence, not performance. And here's the beautiful part. When you begin to anchor into your own needs, when you stop leaking energy into relationships that don't nourish you, you become magnetic to the kinds of connections that do. People who are rooted in themselves will feel it. People who value presence over perfection will find resonance in you. Because sensitivity doesn't repel the right people. It attracts the ones who know how to meet you in your depth, without drowning you. You don't need hundreds of these relationships. One or two may be enough. Even just one. Because when you're nourished on that level, you stop searching for validation in places that can't offer it. You stop settling for connection that comes with a cost. You stop proving, and in that stillness, you begin to rest. Not alone, not abandoned, but deeply supported by yourself first, and then, over time, by those who know how to meet you where you truly live. Chapter 22, Career and Purpose. Alignment for the highly sensitive person. Work isn't just a job for a sensitive person. It's a place where the nervous system is constantly engaged, where energy is exchanged not just through tasks and deadlines, but through people, pace, noise, structure, or lack of it. And when the environment is wrong, it doesn't just feel stressful, it feels inhospitable. You may have tried to make it work, tried to keep up in high stimulation settings, tried to ignore the fluorescent lights, the overlapping meetings, the background tension in the office, tried to mask the overwhelm with productivity, to push through the fog. And maybe you succeeded on paper, but inside the cost was high. Because when the nervous system is consistently overwhelmed by input, even meaningful work becomes unsustainable. This is a common story for many highly sensitive people. Burnout not from laziness or lack of talent, but from working in systems that were never built for deep processors. The culture rewards speed, volume, endless availability, but sensitive people bring something different. They bring depth, precision, insight, emotional intelligence, the ability to spot details and dynamics others miss entirely. These aren't soft skills, they're structural ones, but they can't be accessed in environments that constantly trigger dysregulation. So the question becomes, how can work align with your nervous system? This doesn't always mean quitting everything and starting over. It means beginning with clarity. Clarity about how your system works best. You might start by asking, when during the day do I feel most focused and most drained? What kind of feedback helps me grow? And what shuts me down? Do I work best alone with flexibility or with gentle structure and support? What kinds of tasks leave me deeply tired, even if I'm good at them? Where am I performing productivity rather than creating from alignment? These questions aren't theoretical. They shape the work life you're building, moment by moment. Some sensitive people thrive in solo work, writing, design, healing professions, creative, arts, research. Others need collaboration, but with the right team, the right rhythm, and mutual respect. It's not about hiding from challenge. It's about choosing challenges that don't cost you your center. In practical terms, alignment may look like blocking off recovery time between meetings, turning off notifications that keep your system on high alert, shifting from multitasking to deep single focus, creating quiet spaces for restoration during the workday, advocating for yourself, calmly, clearly, when something isn't working. And yes, for some, it might mean a bigger transition, shifting careers, starting something new, leaving toxic environments, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. Because here's the truth. Sensitivity without alignment will always feel like struggle. But sensitivity in alignment, it's genius, it's creativity, strategy, compassion, presence, a level of perception and purpose that can't be taught, only protected. So don't ask, what job should I do as a sensitive person? Ask, what do I need in order to do any job well and still feel whole? The answer is not the title, it's the structure, the rhythm, the values. When those things match your nervous system, work stops feeling like survival and starts becoming a channel for your gifts, not in burnout, not in fear, but in clarity, consistency, and care. Chapter 23, Redefining Success on Your Own Terms. There's a version of success that gets taught early. Be productive, be visible, move fast, achieve more, push through, don't stop. But for the highly sensitive person, this version of success often feels off, not just stressful, but misaligned, like chasing something that doesn't speak your language. You may have tried to follow it, worked harder, longer, louder, tried to match the pace, the tone, the volume, and maybe you got the results, the job, the praise, the title. But underneath, something didn't feel right. There was a cost to your nervous system, to your presence, to your creativity, to your peace. The truth is, the dominant model of success is built on output. What can be measured? What can be posted? What can be scaled? But sensitivity isn't linear. It's not a machine. It's cyclical, deep, attuned to rhythms, nuance, meaning. And when that's ignored, success becomes hollow. Empty wins, crowded calendars, high performance, low connection. So what does success mean on your terms? Start here. What actually feels meaningful to you? Not just impressive? What kind of work allows you to be fully yourself? What kind of pace allows your nervous system to stay regulated? What kind of feedback nourishes instead of destabilizes? What do you want to contribute? And at what cost? Success doesn't have to be about bigger. It can be about better. Not more reach, but deeper impact. Not more applause, but more alignment. Not endless productivity, but sustainable presence. Maybe success looks like one clear, focused hour of creative work. Serving a small number of people deeply, not a crowd superficially. Building something slowly, with intention and care. Turning down opportunities that look good on paper, but feel wrong in the body. Protecting your mornings, your energy, your stillness, because that's when your best ideas arrive. This is success as nervous system support, success as emotional integrity, success that doesn't require self-abandonment to achieve. The world may not always reward this version loudly, but your body will know. It will feel the difference. Because here's the deeper truth. Sensitive people are often driven not by ego, but by meaning. Not by competition, but by contribution. And when contribution comes from alignment, it doesn't drain. It energizes, it expands. You may still feel pressure to keep up. You may still compare. That's okay. The key is to notice that impulse and choose something gentler. This is what redefining success looks like. You no longer chase what depletes you. You choose what supports you. And that choice isn't small. It's revolutionary. It means showing up fully without running on empty. It means measuring your days not by output, but by how grounded you feel. It means building a life that fits your nervous system and trusting that you get to decide what success means now. And that new definition, it's valid, it's wise, and it's yours to live. Your path is not one of force, it's one of truth. Pause here. Let the noise fall away. There's a reason the old path felt heavy. It was built on force, on shoulds, on speed, comparison, and silent burnout. But your path, the one you're learning to walk now, is different. It doesn't demand you push harder. It doesn't require you to override your signals. It doesn't ask you to be someone else. It asks for truth, the truth of what works for you, the truth of what drains and what nourishes, the truth of what success feels like in your body, not just what it looks like from the outside. This kind of path isn't always loud. It doesn't always get applause, but it brings something better: peace, clarity, belonging, not to others, but to yourself. You weren't made to bulldoze through life. You were made to move with intention, to feel, to sense, to respond to the world with presence, not performance. And when you begin walking that path, quietly, consistently, on your own terms, life doesn't get easier. It gets truer. That truth is your compass now. Let it lead you. Chapter 24. Understanding your emotional depth without drowning in it. Sensitive people feel emotions in high resolution, not just their own, but others too. It's like living with the volume turned up. Joy isn't just a pleasant feeling, it's radiant. Sadness isn't just a low, it's a full body pull. Anger, love, grief, awe, they don't pass through. They fill the space. This is a gift, and also a challenge, because most people are taught to manage emotions with control, to downplay them, label them as irrational, hide them, fix them, reframe them quickly. But for highly sensitive people, emotions are not surface level distractions. They are signals, deep, meaningful, and layered. The challenge is that without support or awareness, emotional depth can become overwhelming. It can feel like riding wave after wave without rest, becoming overly identified with every emotion that arises, feeling consumed by someone else's pain, being unable to access clarity because the feeling is too big, too loud, too fast. That's not drama. It's the reality of an open system without anchors. Emotional mastery doesn't mean shutting those feelings down. It means learning how to stay grounded inside of them. It means knowing this is real and it will move. This is intense and I can hold it without drowning. This is painful and it belongs here for now. The first shift is this: stop labeling emotions as good or bad. Emotions are messengers. They aren't threats. They aren't moral failures. They're simply movement in the body, energy seeking resolution. A wave of sadness doesn't mean weakness. A spike of anger doesn't make someone broken. They mean something's alive. Something's trying to speak. The next shift is learning to name what's real with precision. Instead of saying, I'm overwhelmed, pause and go deeper. Is this grief? Is it overstimulation? Is it someone else's sadness you've picked up? Is it a boundary that was crossed but never spoken? Naming helps regulate. When the body knows what it's feeling, it stops bracing. The unknown becomes known, and that brings calm. From there, we shift into containment, not suppression, but holding. A simple practice: when an emotion rises, breathe slowly. Place a hand over the chest or the belly, wherever the feeling lives. Say quietly, I'm feeling a and I'm here with it. No fixing, no judging, just staying. This practice creates internal trust. It tells the nervous system, you don't have to panic. We can feel this together. And that's the difference between being in an emotion and being with one. When you're in it, you feel consumed. When you're with it, you remain connected to your center. You observe the wave. You hold space. You breathe and allow. Some days this will come easily. Other days, the emotion might feel too big. That's okay. In those moments, return to the body. Touch something textured. Move slowly. Speak out loud, even to yourself. I'm okay. This is passing. I'm still here. You don't need to fix your emotions. You need to listen to them. Because emotions that are heard don't need to scream. Over time, you'll begin to notice. You recover faster. You spiral less. You stop fearing your feelings. You begin to trust yourself, not because emotions stop coming, but because you know how to meet them. That is emotional mastery, not silence, not stoicism, not constant joy, but inner spaciousness, enough room inside the body to feel without fragmentation. This doesn't mean life stops being intense. It means you become steady enough to stay present through that intensity. And in that steadiness, sensitivity stops being chaos and it becomes wisdom. Chapter 25. Tools for riding the emotional waves without losing yourself. Emotions aren't problems. They're processes, movements, waves passing through the body, asking to be felt, not solved. But when emotional waves hit hard and fast, it's easy to feel destabilized, like the ground disappears, like the nervous system doesn't know where to go. Especially for the sensitive person, even a subtle shift in emotion can feel amplified. What begins as irritation grows into overwhelm. What starts as sadness becomes a full body ache. And because the system is open, the emotion fills every room, every thought, every breath. That's when tools matter. Not to shut down the feeling, but to create containment, a way to hold the wave without drowning in it. Let's begin with rhythmic grounding. Emotions often rise in intensity because the body forgets it's safe. Rhythm helps restore that safety. One simple practice: box breathing. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold again for 4. Repeat slowly, at least 3 rounds. This tells the nervous system, we're anchored, we're here. Another option: rocking or swaying gently. It mimics how we self-soothe as infants, and it still works. The body finds rhythm, and the mind begins to follow. Next, name and frame the emotion. If something intense is rising, pause and ask, what's the headline right now? What's the story I'm telling myself? Where is this showing up in my body? You might discover the story is old, from childhood, from a past relationship, from something unresolved. You might realize the emotion isn't even about this moment. It's a trigger from something much deeper. By naming the wave, you reduce its grip. It's not a mystery anymore, it's a message. From there, movement can help metabolize the feeling. Feelings are not just mental, they're chemical. The body literally needs to process them. This could be a brisk walk with no destination, stretching with long exhales, dancing slowly in a dim room, shaking out the hands, the shoulders, the legs. Don't force a release. Let the body lead. Even 5 minutes can shift the inner landscape. If the emotion is tangled in thought, externalizing it helps. Journaling is one of the most powerful ways to move emotion from inside to outside. Not to write something beautiful, just to move what's heavy. Start with, right now, I feel what I want to say but haven't, what I'm holding that no one sees. Let it be messy. Let it spill. Let it say what your mouth doesn't always have permission to speak. If writing feels too much, try voice memos to yourself. Speak in a calm tone, not to vent, but to track what's true. You can say, this is what's rising. This is what I know. This is what I need right now. Over time, these moments become practices of self-attunement. You stop waiting for someone else to rescue you from the feeling. You begin to show up for yourself again and again. And when the wave finally passes, and it will, take time to return slowly. Drink water. Touch your chest or your arms. Say something simple. That was big, and I stayed. I'm proud of how I met that moment. This is how emotional resilience is built, not through avoidance, not through suppression, but through presence. You learn that every wave has a peak and then an end. You stop fearing the feelings, and you begin to trust your capacity to move with them, because mastery doesn't mean never feeling overwhelmed. It means not losing yourself when it happens. You remain connected, not just to the emotion, but to the part of you that can hold it all without falling apart. That part of you is growing stronger. With every breath, every pause, every choice to stay present when it would be easier to run. That's the quiet strength of a sensitive person who has learned to ride their waves with clarity, care, and calm. Chapter 26. Turning emotional intensity into insight. Emotional intensity is often treated like a problem, something to minimize, manage, keep hidden until it passes. But for sensitive people, that intensity carries something more, something useful. If listened to and not feared, emotional depth can become one of the most refined tools for insight, because inside every strong emotional wave is information, not just about the moment, but about your patterns, your values, your inner compass. Intensity says, this matters to me. This reminds me of something important. This is touching something unhealed. But most people don't stay long enough with their emotions to hear what they're really saying. They rush to soothe, reframe, escape. They fear being consumed. And that fear makes sense. Emotional intensity can feel like a fire, but it's a fire that reveals, not just destroys. It burns away what's false, what's outdated, what no longer fits. The key is not to get stuck in the flame, but to stand close enough to see what it's trying to light up. Let's look at this through a practical lens. A moment of sudden anger might not just be reactivity. It could be a boundary that's been ignored for too long. A wave of sadness after a conversation might not be weakness, but grief for the part of you that went unseen. An anxious spiral in a seemingly safe situation might be a signal. This environment doesn't actually support who I am. When emotions are held with awareness, they stop being noise. They become signals, and those signals can guide powerful decisions. What needs to be said that hasn't been spoken? What needs to be grieved so it can be released? What needs to be claimed? A truth of value, a desire that's been hidden under fear. Sensitive people often have a gift for this kind of emotional listening, the capacity to feel something deeply, sit with it fully, and ask, what's the message? Underneath this? This is emotional alchemy. It's how sadness becomes clarity, how grief becomes space, how even rage, when honored without harm, becomes a boundary, a direction, a return to self-respect. There's a practice here. When an emotion feels big, instead of asking, how do I stop feeling this? Ask, what is this trying to show me? You might be surprised by what rises. Memories, words you haven't spoken, parts of yourself you've silenced in order to be liked, approved of, or accepted. Sometimes the intensity comes not because something is wrong, but because something important has gone unexpressed. And when it finally surfaces, it comes with power. That's not danger. That's direction. The more you learn to decode emotional signals, the more precise your decisions become. You stop needing outside approval to know what feels right. You stop needing to explain your boundaries. You stop second-guessing your inner knowing. Because you're no longer fighting your feelings. You're working with them. This doesn't mean overanalyzing every emotion. Not every feeling needs a backstory. Some just need to move. But the ones that return, the ones that repeat, those carry messages. And if met with care, they evolve. They integrate. The same sadness that once pulled you under now teaches compassion. The same fear that once froze you now becomes your instinct for discernment. The same anger that once overwhelmed you becomes your sacred no. That's the shift. From reactivity to response. From overwhelm to orientation. From emotional chaos to emotional clarity. Because emotional intensity isn't the enemy. It's a compass. One that points to what's real, what's unresolved, and what's ready to change. The more fluency you develop with your emotional world, the more resilient you become, not by hardening, but by knowing exactly where you stand. And that's not weakness. That's leadership from the inside out. Chapter 27, Sensitive Body, Sensitive, Healing, Listening through the Body. Long before the mind speaks, the body feels. Before a thought forms, before a word is spoken, before an emotion can even be named. The body has already reacted. A tightening in the chest, a flutter in the stomach, a subtle ache behind the eyes, the need to retreat, to exhale, to pause. For the highly sensitive person, the body isn't just a container, it's a communicator, a finely tuned system constantly processing what the world sends in. But most of us were never taught how to listen to it. We were taught to manage symptoms, push through discomfort, ignore fatigue, rationalize tension. So we did. We overrode the signals, we pushed past our limits, and we called it strength. But now, something deeper is calling. Something quieter, more honest. The body isn't just asking for rest, it's asking to be heard. Because healing doesn't happen in the mind alone. It happens when the body is brought back into the conversation. This is where sensitive healing begins. Not by fixing what's broken, but by listening to what's been speaking all along. It may begin with subtle practices, waking up and checking in, not with your to-do list, but with your breath. Where am I holding tension today? What sensation is most present? What part of me wants attention? These questions are not about analysis, they're about presence. Presence allows the body to feel safe again, and safety is the soil where healing takes root. You may notice your shoulders rise every time your phone buzzes. Your breath shortens when someone interrupts you. Your gut tightens before a decision that doesn't feel aligned. These are not quirks, they're language. And the more you listen, the more fluent you become in the truth of your own experience. Sometimes healing is not about finding the right thought. It's about finding the held breath, releasing the tension, letting the jaw unclench, letting the belly soften, letting the spine realign under the weight it's been carrying for too long. Because the sensitive body doesn't just feel, it remembers. It holds memories that haven't been spoken, grief that never had a place to land, joy that got interrupted, moments of fear that were minimized by others but stored as truth inside your tissue. This is not about blaming the past. It's about acknowledging that the body has been doing the best it can, and it's tired of doing it alone. One of the most powerful healing practices for the sensitive body is stillness, not as avoidance, but as reconnection. To lie on the floor and breathe without trying to improve anything. To let gravity hold you while your nervous system slowly recalibrates. To simply say inwardly, "You're safe now. I'm listening." Movement can be medicine too, but not high intensity unless it's aligned. What the sensitive body often needs is mindful movement, slow walking without a goal, gentle stretching with long exhales, laying down and allowing the body to guide the next motion, not the mind. This shifts the system from force to flow. When movement follows sensation, not obligation, healing becomes embodied. Touch helps too. A hand on the heart, a warm compress over the belly, a weighted blanket. These are not indulgences, they are anchors. When you return to the body again and again, you stop asking it to get over things. You begin asking, "What are you still holding?" And that question changes everything. It brings softness, it brings space, it brings you home. Because the body doesn't need to be fixed, it needs to be honored. It's not fragile, it's responsive. It's doing the job of a deep sensor in a loud world. And when it's finally given support, when it's allowed to unwind, when its messages are heard instead of silenced, it doesn't just heal, it teaches. Chapter 28. Somatic Safety, Creating a Body That Feels Like Home. Safety isn't just a mental concept, it's a physical experience, a felt sense. It shows up in the body as warmth, softness, ease of breath, an absence of bracing. For the highly sensitive person, achieving that sense of safety is often more complicated, because when the nervous system has been in survival mode, alert, adaptive, hyper-aware, for years or even decades, stillness can feel unfamiliar, even unsafe. Sometimes the quiet feels eerie. The absence of tension feels wrong. The body doesn't quite know how to let go, because it's been holding on for so long. That's why somatic safety doesn't happen all at once. It's built, moment by moment, in layers, with consistency. And it begins not with controls, but with curiosity. Start here. What does safety feel like for me? Not the idea of safety, not what others define it as, but the actual sensory experience in the body. It might be the weight of a blanket, dim lighting, a certain tone of voice, the quiet hum of white noise, a chair that holds you fully, breathing in a familiar rhythm, knowing no one needs anything from you for the next 10 minutes. These small things aren't trivial. They're signals, and when your system receives those signals regularly, it begins to repattern. The body starts to trust that it no longer needs to be on all the time. It begins to believe the moment is safe, not because someone said so, but because it feels so. This is where healing deepens, because when the body feels safe, it can finally soften, it can stop bracing, it can stop anticipating threat, and it can begin to return to its natural intelligence. For many, this process reveals how much tension was running in the background. Jaw clenched, shoulders raised, stomach tight. Even at rest, the system was never truly resting. Somatic safety allows the body to return to baseline, to breathe more slowly, to digest more easily, to sleep more deeply, to move through emotions without getting stuck in them, and most importantly, to stay present without feeling at risk. Because presence is impossible when the body feels unsafe. That's why so many sensitive people live in their heads, not by choice, but by necessity. The body felt like too much, too loud, too full. But the body is not the enemy. It's the place where truth lives. It just needs to become a safe place to return to. This might involve touch, holding your own hands, laying a palm on the chest, pressing gently into the thighs or arms with rhythmic pressure. All of these remind the body, you are here, you are held. Or it might involve sound, a deep sigh, humming, a mantra repeated slowly. These create vibration, a language the body understands. It could be stillness, not to meditate, just to pause, to sit, feel, notice, to ask gently, what's happening in here, right now? What would bring softness, not in theory, but in this body, in this moment? Somatic safety doesn't mean avoiding all discomfort. It means having a grounded place inside to return to when discomfort arises. It's the knowing that even when I'm sad, I'm safe. Even when I'm overwhelmed, I don't have to leave myself. Even when emotion floods in, I can breathe and stay present. That's nervous system fluency. That's regulation. That's safety embodied. And when that becomes normal, not dramatic, not rare, but normal, life changes. Not because the world gets quieter, but because you do. Because your body becomes a place that holds you, not just reacts for you, a home, not a battleground, not a mystery, not something to escape. And in that home, healing happens without force. It happens naturally, rhythmically, quietly, like a breath that finally reaches all the way down. Chapter 29. Your healing pace is sacred. Healing isn't linear, it's not a race, and it's not measured by milestones others can see. For the sensitive person, healing often moves in waves, forward, then still, then in circles. Some days bring clarity, others bring fog. Some moments feel like breakthroughs, others feel like unraveling, and none of it is wrong. The world around you may push for speed. It rewards fast results, quick fixes, clean timelines, but your body, your heart, your nervous system, they don't follow that pace. They follow something deeper, a rhythm that is slower, more honest, more alive. This rhythm is not always visible. Sometimes you may not look like you're changing, but internally, something is shifting. A muscle that was always tense begins to relax. A boundary that always felt terrifying gets spoken. A wave of emotion comes, and this time you stay with it. That's healing. Not because it's dramatic, but because it's true. The sensitive person's healing isn't always loud. It's often soft. It happens in the quiet choices, leaving a room before the overwhelm hits, turning the phone off instead of explaining, resting without guilt, asking, what do I need? And then listening, saying no with a calm nervous system, not a shaking voice. Every time you do something differently, even in the smallest way, your system learns safety. And that learning compounds, not overnight, not on a schedule, but over time. Each gentle repetition teaches the body we don't live in crisis anymore. We don't have to push to be worthy. We don't have to abandon ourselves to feel safe. That's how you build trust with yourself, not by being perfect, but by being present. And presence takes time. So let's say this clearly. Your healing pace is sacred. It doesn't need to be understood by others. It doesn't need to look impressive. It doesn't need to move faster just because someone else is moving quickly. You're not late. You're not behind. You're not failing. You're listening, learning, unwinding old patterns with care. And that care is enough. Some days you may move with clarity, others with confusion. Some days you'll feel strong, others tender. Every part of it counts. Every part belongs. And when doubt rises, as it will, come back to the body. Place a hand over the heart, breathe slowly, and say inwardly, I'm still here. I'm still healing. I don't have to rush. That's the voice of a new rhythm. Not one of urgency, but of reverence. Because healing isn't just about becoming stronger, it's about becoming whole. And wholeness isn't a destination, it's a relationship with your nervous system, with your truth, with the pace your body has been asking for all along. So walk that pace, even when it's slow, especially when it's slow, because when you honor it, you create a life that fits you, not just a life you fit into, and that is what healing was always meant to be. Chapter 30, The Return, Living, Sensitive, Strong, and Whole. In every meaningful journey, there comes a point of return, not a return to how things used to be, but a return to who you are, now changed. This is that moment. You've walked through the fog of overstimulation, the weight of emotional overload, the pressure to hide, to harden, to function at the expense of your truth. You've listened to your body. You've sat with your feelings. You've peeled away the parts of yourself that were shaped by survival. And now, you're returning, but not empty-handed. You carry something now, not a shield of defensiveness, not a need to explain or prove. What you carry is wisdom, wisdom that comes from being deeply attuned, from knowing how to pause, how to feel, how to move through this world without abandoning yourself in the process. That's no small thing, because for a long time, sensitivity may have felt like a burden. It asked too much, felt too much, needed too much, but what it was really asking for was care. Now, you understand that. You understand that the way you process the world is not a flaw. It's a compass, a finely tuned intelligence, not something to manage, but something to partner with. And partnership means presence, no longer running, no longer bracing, no longer trying to become someone more acceptable, less emotional, more together. Now you move differently. You check in before you commit. You listen before you agree. You ask what's true before you ask what's expected. And even when old patterns whisper, just say yes, or don't make it awkward, or it's not a big deal, you pause, you breathe, you choose from clarity. That pause is everything, because that pause is where you live now, in the space between reaction and response, between collapse and power, between people-pleasing and inner peace. You've created a space within yourself, one that doesn't depend on how others react, one that doesn't disappear when someone is disappointed, one that holds you steady when emotions rise, yours or someone else's. And this space, it's not a wall, it's a home, a place you can return to, again and again, with your feelings, with your confusion, with your needs, without shame. That is what it means to live sensitive, strong, and whole. Not perfect, not constant, but centered. This doesn't mean you'll never feel overwhelmed again. You will. Life will still be loud at times. People will still misunderstand you. You'll still have moments where you question, retreat, fall into old habits. But now, you have something you didn't before. Awareness, tools, language, boundaries, and perhaps most important of all, self-trust. You trust your own signals. You trust that your pace is valid. You trust that you don't need to do things like everyone else to live a meaningful, grounded life. And that trust changes everything. It's the quiet shift that says, I know what I need. I'm allowed to need it. And I can meet those needs without guilt. You walk into rooms differently now, not trying to read and react, but anchoring first, how do I feel? What's mine to hold? You connect differently, not bending for approval, but bringing your presence and letting others meet you as you are. You work differently, not to earn rest or prove worth, but from alignment, doing less, but doing it with integrity and clarity. And slowly, your life begins to reflect you, not the version of you the world expected, but the one that's been here all along. Sensitive, yes, but also grounded, clear, self-respecting, wise. That is your return. Not to a past self, not to a younger you, but to a truer you. the one who knows how to move gently through this world without shrinking inside it. This is the path now, not of striving, not of fixing, but of living, fully, calmly, in rhythm with your own nervous system and soul. You haven't just survived your sensitivity, you've come to understand it, honor it, live from it, with strength and intention. You've come home, and from here, everything is possible. Listen, reflect, apply. You've just walked through a powerful exploration, not just of sensitivity, but of self, of how you feel, how you move through the world, how you return to what's real for you. This wasn't about becoming someone new. It was about remembering, reclaiming, rerouting yourself in the truth that you never had to be less sensitive. You only needed more support, and now you have it. In your awareness, in your tools, in your rhythm. So here's what comes next. Listen, not just to this audiobook, but to your body, your energy, your emotional signals. Every day they are speaking. Your job is to pause long enough to hear them. Reflect. What resonated? What patterns feel familiar? Where are you still leaking energy? And where are you ready to draw a new boundary? You don't need to act on everything at once. Start with what calls you. One shift, one practice, one choice that supports your nervous system today. Apply. Not perfectly, but consistently. The real transformation happens not in what you learn, but in how you live. This isn't the end of your journey. It's the point where everything begins to integrate. Let your sensitivity guide you. Let your strength protect you. Let your presence return again and again. And if you ever forget, you can come back here, to this voice, to these pages, to the quiet reminder that your softness was never a weakness. It was your wisdom all along.